Hey, friend, I'm Sid Meadows, and I'm a business leader and longtime student of the office furniture industry. And welcome to the Trend Report. Thanks for joining me today. And I'm excited to welcome Marianne Hewitt with SalesStar to the show. Now, Marianne and I were introduced to each other by our friend Rex Miller. Some of you will remember Rex. He's been on the show 3 different times. And I'm confident we're going to have a great conversation today that will help all of us become better at sales and driving revenue. As you know, my goal is simple: provide you with valuable insights, information, and resources to help you grow and your business grow. So let's dive into our conversation today. Marianne, how are you? Welcome to the Trend Report.
I'm great. Thank you, Sid. I'm just so honored to be here, and thank you for having me on the show.
Well, I'm excited to have this conversation and learn a little bit. So let's just jump right in. Um, do you think that sales in our industry is truly relationship driven?
I think I think people buy from people. So ultimately, yes, I
Okay.
think it is truly relationship building or based it. What am I trying to say?
Relationship
We can
driven.
cut
Relationship driven.
relationship driven. I
So
do think.
people buy from people, and I believe that too. But
Mhm.
um, when you think about relationship, define for me your thoughts about what is a relationship between a seller and a customer, or a seller and an influencer, if you will.
That's a great question, and that's a really important question to ponder, especially if you're a salesperson that has a number on your head, which we all do, right?
Yes.
So, there are a lot of relationships that you have in your life, and you can categorize them. And when it's in a sales relationship, what's most important is that there's symbiosis there, that there is something that the person that you are talking with needs that you can provide. And so at its basis, there has to be value.
Mhm.
That's true for any relationship, and we could go into that, but this is specifically about sales. And so if your prospect has needs that you can't provide, then that's not a valuable relationship.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, and I think I consume a lot of content, a lot of podcasts. I listen to and read a lot of books and other things. And a lot of times when people talk about relationships, they're talking about giving and taking, and
Mhm.
remembering, especially as a salesperson, to not always take from the relationship, but give back to that relationship and feed that relationship, if you will, and honestly feed it more than you take from it. What does that mean to you in the world that you came from?
Well, you're exactly right. And I think the key here is symbiosis. Each of us have to be getting something out of the relationship for it to be valuable for both of us. And I think what you're pointing to, which we see a lot, is um, what's in it for me, me,
Mhm.
me, 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 right?
Yep.
I'm going to show up. I'm going to show you me and who I am, and it's all about me. And I think what's important to shift is learning more about the person that you are hoping to sell to, and find out what their needs are.
Mhm.
I'll just point back to what we were saying earlier. If you can't uncover their needs, how will you know if what you've brought is a solution that's even valuable to them?
Mhm.
So there's give, but there's receiving as well. And I think a give only relationship is not really a relationship. I mean, it will run out of steam. So
Mhm.
there's that.
I think that also goes
So
for a take only relationship, when all you do
absolutely.
is take, 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 take. And, that makes me think about people that call me all the time and they want something from me and they want it free,
Sure.
which is fine. Right.
Right.
But they call me and they want this, and they call me and they want that, and they call me but they never give to the relationship.
Right.
So it makes it really hard. And I honestly wonder if, I'm not thinking of anybody specific, but to me, that's not really a true relationship. It's a one-sided relationship. It's more of a acquaintance than a true relationship.
Absolutely. And we kind of have a mantra at SalesStar that is probably not only ours, but the idea of give, give, ask. Give first, uh, and give wholeheartedly, and give something of value before you ask for something. And I think the tendency, I can tell you, as someone who feels like the clock is always nipping at my heels,
Mm-hmm.
to get to the point is something that is important, but I have to remember to slow down. Like, I'm trying to get something but I need to remember that I need to give something.
Mhm.
And if you give first, there's more of a chance that the person that you're giving to would be willing
Mhm.
to entertain
Yep.
what you're asking for
Mhm. Mhm.
and not feel like you said it's just a take.
Mhm. Well, you said it in the beginning. We all have numbers on our head, right? We all got numbers we've got to hit. In some cases, your compensation plan may be built around a bonus when you hit that number. Others, the more you sell, the more commission that you make, right? Entrepreneurs, the more you sell, the more you live, right? The more you make money in your business. So, but there's always a number out there that we're trying to strive to hit. And as hard as it is to understand, it's a proven philosophy, if you will, that you need to slow down in order to speed up. And slowing down means just understanding the situation you're in, the environment that you're in. It's also about understanding the client or the influencer. And when I say understand them, it's not just about what their job is or what their role is. It's about who they are. Like it's who they are. And hopefully you're taking notes when you're learning this so that you know that their birthday comes up on this date or that they're about to have their first grandchild or their first child, that you recognize that by sending them a card or sending them a video note or something, that you're really building that relationship with them. And it's far beyond what their specific job is, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're talking about activities that will nurture the
Yeah.
relationship. And it's an important piece of the puzzle to
Mhm.
nurture the relationship. That's also a giving activity that you're
Mhm.
talking about. You know, remembering someone is impactful, and that's the person to person human
Mhm.
factor.
Yep.
I think the other thing to be cognizant of maybe is what is this relationship that you're having? Is this a friendship that
Mhm.
maybe every once in a while there might be some business potential, or is this, and it's not either or, there's a
Okay.
spectrum, of course,
Mhm.
but you know, where is this relationship in that spectrum? I think at the heart of sales is what is your client's problems and challenges.
Mhm.
So you need to understand that.
Yep.
And I must say that in my career, I've missed that mark many times.
Mhm.
You know, I would say that's number one. Um, Learn what their challenges and their problems are. Because again, if what you have as a salesperson, if whatever product or service that you have is not going to help solve the problem or the challenge, there's less value in it.
Yep.
In fact, it could even be detrimental.
Yeah, it could backfire on you.
It
So
could.
I have a lot more questions about this, and there's a couple of specific things I want to talk about today, but let's talk about you for a minute. So, how did you get into the furniture business?
Oh, that's interesting. Well, I will just start by saying I've had a very long 30-year career that has really been woven and threaded back and forth between design
Mhm.
and sales and marketing. And when I moved to Texas 11 years ago, I was in the flooring business, had been working for a flooring contractor. And I went to work for a flooring manufacturer, and a headhunter found me
Mhm.
and had me consider possibly coming over to a furniture manufacturer. And it was never something that I thought I would do, but the more I heard about it and talked
Mhm.
to the people there, I decided that it was probably a great opportunity. I'm so glad I did.
That's awesome. So started out in flooring, and Marianne just mentioned we both live in Texas. She lives in Texas.
Mhm.
Probably from where I live to where she is about an hour. We met a few weeks ago for coffee in downtown Dallas, and got to catch up with each other before we scheduled this recording. So we're both Texans, if you will. So flooring, and then somebody said, "Hey, come to the dark side and let's go sell furniture."
Well, it's
And
a little bit more than that. I started my career as a designer. So I'm a
yeah.
licensed interior designer in Florida. I'm also now licensed in Texas.
Mhm.
And I started my career actually, my first job out of college was a designer for a furniture dealer,
Oh,
a Herman
okay.
Miller dealer. So
Awesome.
really that was my first time into the furniture world. Then I went and worked for HOK for several years, had a fantastic experience, also wore me out, but did some beautiful projects that were really exciting.
Hmm.
Then after having a couple kids and
Hmm.
being ready to go back to work, I went to work for the flooring dealer, and then furniture again.
Right.
And then fast forward, went back into design for a short while, and here I
Well,
am.
you said woven in and out, so you
Yeah.
really did just kind of describe that. So when you worked for a furniture manufacturer, so what was your job? What was your role at the furniture manufacturer?
So when I was first hired, I was a dealer business manager, which is
Mm,
essentially like the primary rep
yep.
for all the verticals
Hmm.
for the dealers in
Yep.
the area for that manufacturer.
Okay.
And then I was promoted to regional sales manager. So I
Okay.
was regional sales manager for Steelcase for about 5 years.
Okay. So you worked for a major brand, you worked for a major architectural firm, you started at a dealer, and then you went to the other side of the industry, meaning flooring, back to a design firm. So tell us what you obviously have a lot of vast experience in our industry. So tell us what you do today.
Today, I work with firm owners who are struggling with meeting their growth targets.
Hmm.
And the company that I work for is called SalesStar. We're based out of New Zealand. And I work for the very first franchise owner in the United States, Frank Niekamp.
Okay.
And our purpose is to help firm owners, architecture and design firm owners, grow their business. And I've had my own firm
Yep.
actually as well. That's interwoven in there as
Yeah.
well. And I made so many mistakes that I
Sure.
know now what those mistakes were. And it's a passion project for me to be able to help firms, small firms, medium-sized firms, navigate around sales and business development, which by the way, we're never taught in school,
Ever.
and help them not make those same mistakes and
Sure.
grow faster.
Okay, so you're taking all your years of experience, it turned it into a coaching consulting business in partnership with someone, and your focus is sales and business development specifically for small to mid-size A&D firms.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And I also work on a team with a colleague whose focus is furniture dealers.
Okay.
And so we also collaborate.
Sure.
She sometimes handles my clients, I sometimes handle.
Understood. Okay. So this leads me to my question. And if you're a frequent listener to the show, you've heard me talk about this a lot. And so this is kind of the premise of actually even why Rex introduced us, because I asked on a show with him this very question. And so I'm going to ask it again, but I'm going to set it up just for a minute. So we have two different sides of our coin when we think about our industry. We have the pre-COVID and the post-COVID. Pre-COVID, we were updating binders. We were calling on people. We could walk in the door without an appointment. We could go to the library. We could, walk around and say hey to people. And then post-COVID, all that changed. And so specifically, as we think about A&D firms, that their A&D firms are pumped. Some of them are working remotely. Some of those remote workers may not even be in the same state or city where the office is. They might be down in Florida and the office is here in Texas working remotely, right? In some cases, some that are in the office are in the office 2 to 3 days a week. And then as the furniture people, I'm going to refer to us as the bad guys, right? As the bad guys,
Oh,
we
come
get
on.
told, well, we get told that you can have 15 minutes. I call it 15 minutes of fame. And I've written an article about that, by the way. We'll link it down in the show notes. It was a couple of years ago. But it's about this 15 minutes. And by the way, there's a whole hour, but you're going to do virtual and remote presentations. So you're going to be in person presenting. There are people remote logging in or vice versa, right? You could be remote. And you're going to just share this hour with 3 other people. So each of you have got 15 minutes. And I sit here and go, well, how the heck do you do or say anything about your company or the products, or to your point earlier, the problems and challenges that our product solves in 15 minutes? So that's kind of the post world, right? And I've said, and the question I've asked many times is, in today's world, how do we call on the A&D community? How do we work with them? How do we build relationships with them? As you said in the beginning, we're a relationship driven business. How do we build relationships with people that we can only see 15 minutes twice a year through a screen? And we got
That's
to
a
bring
very
lunch
good.
or breakfast or whatever, right?
Sure, and there's all sorts of constraints, and I
Mhm.
think, on a high level, we're talking about compression of time, right?
Yep.
Compression of resources, maybe even. And there's so many things that came to mind when you were setting that up. One of those things is the world has changed.
Mhm.
The world has changed, and the way that we interact has to change as well, which means that we've got to maybe rethink our approach. And maybe we need to freshen up our approach that maybe is more applicable to the way the world is today.
Okay, let's hold on to that.
Okay.
So I totally agree with you that the world has changed. The way we
Mhm.
work has changed, right? The way we
Mhm.
drive sales has changed, right?
Mhm.
But I also believe, and I'll say very lovingly, that as a industry, we're reluctant to change. We're reluctant to. I mean, I've had people tell me, "Oh, the 6x8 cubicles are coming back, Sid." I'm like, okay, that's not really true. But I think at times we're reluctant to change or to at least embrace change, right? So what I wrote down when you said that is we have to change. So tactically, Marianne, what are a couple of things that you could guide the sellers on this listening to this episode of things they should change or need to change?
Well, before I go into that, I just want to push on what we're talking about here,
Okay.
and especially because furniture and design are both creative endeavors,
Hmm.
and I would suggest to you that change is difficult for anyone. We all, as humans, are going to push back on change because it's uncharted. It's a fear of the unknown, but you have to also think about it. It's an opportunity to be creative.
Hmm.
I mean, we've been given an amazing opportunity to rewrite how we do things. So I wanted to just double click on that, if I
No,
could
I'm
use corporate
glad you
speak for a
did
moment.
because I think it's very, very important. This is an opportunity for us to create. It's an opportunity for us to be different, opportunity for us to stand out. It's an opportunity for us to lead our industry, if you will. Individually, each of us have that opportunity to lead our industry to doing things differently. Perfect. Thank you for
I
doing that.
agree. And so I think given that, we have to back up. And what we were talking about earlier, we have to slow down
Mhm.
and we have to think about what is it we're trying to achieve, and maybe bring some clarity to these things. Um, who is it we're trying to talk to? Why is it we need to talk to them? Are they even the right person that we need to be talking to? Is it
Mhm.
even the right firm? So there are a lot of assumptions, I think, that as salespeople maybe are applied to us, or maybe we
Mhm.
apply to ourselves, that maybe we should question
Okay.
to be sure that we really are getting to the right person for what for that symbiotic relationship. So that comes down to, like, I mean, our speak, it's target market, target client. And
Mhm.
then, let's think about what are other ways that we can create these relationships. Because I would submit to you that in a 15-minute shared presentation, there's only so much relationship that you're going to be able to achieve.
Mhm.
I would even suggest that if you, and I think about it this way, a colleague of mine taught this to me, and I just love this. It's when you're trying to generate leads, which I would suggest presentations or lead generation activity.
Mhm.
There's three things you want to keep in mind: visibility, credibility, and profitability. And by profitability, I'm not necessarily saying, how much money you'll make. It's really, what are you getting out of it? What's your return on your time? So if we think about that specific interaction, what is the return on your time that you're expecting? Are your expectations going to be met given the new constraints? And if they're not, what can you shift? So
Mhm.
is it still worth it to do that? I would suggest probably it is, but maybe reorienting how we think about what we want to get out of that. What do we want to get out of that 15 minutes? We want to have credibility, want to build credibility. Well, you could probably do that in 15 minutes.
Mhm.
You can start to build credibility,
Sure.
right? Visibility, certainly get visibility with a lot of people, including 3 other people that are there to present, right?
Mhm.
And then profitability, you know, what is it you're trying to get out of it? And then if you're not getting out of it what you used to get out of it, and I'll just say back in the old days, what other activities can you do where you can win back some of that return?
Sure. Okay. So I'm writing these out in steps, right?
Mhm.
So step 1 is question everything. Get the clarity around the who, the why. Is it the right firm before? Step 2 is the, let's call it VCP, right? Visibility, credibility, and profitability. And I did a little bit of that with you already. One of the first
Okay.
things that I asked you was to tell us about your journey, which established your credibility as an, if you will, an authority on this topic. And I even reiterated it to you or reframed it back that you worked for a major brand, you worked for a major architectural firm, you've owned your own architectural firm. So if there's anybody qualified to help answer this question or give us insights as sellers as to the best practices or ways to get in front of the design community, you're that person. You're one of those many people that could share their voice with us about how. So I love it. I love that you use visibility, credibility, and profitability. And you tied profitability not to money, because that's how we think about it, right? We're salespeople.
Mhm.
We think about
All
that
right.
gross profit and blah, 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 right? How many design hours we spend on drawing a product because we get to charged for it, all that kind of good stuff, right? But what you talked about in profitability was your time investment. And because that does tie directly to the profitability, right? And is this really worth my investment of time, which ties directly to, is this the right firm for me to be calling on? Right.
Is
So
it the
what would
right
step 3
firm?
be?
Is it the right
Yep.
platform? Right? I mean, like all of those things. Sorry, I
No,
didn't
no,
mean
no,
to
no, you're
interrupt
good.
you.
So my next question would be, is what would be step 3?
So step 3 would
Yeah.
be to consider all of the other lead generation activities that are available to you. I would imagine that you could probably list at least 20 lead generation activities.
Mhm.
I mean,
Sure.
I could list probably 5 right off the top of my head, you know,
Mhm.
presentations, yes, absolutely. Organization meetings. You know, where is that person going to be?
Yep.
Look on their LinkedIn. Are you connected on LinkedIn? That's
Mhm.
another, you know, way to generate leads and
Mhm.
to connect with people.
Mhm.
What are all those other areas where you can connect with that person? And like we talked about earlier, twofold. What are the things that you can do to nurture that relationship? And how can you create the opportunity to have a really enriching conversation with that
Mhm.
person to learn about them?
Yep.
Again, it's not have the conversation to tell them all about you.
Mhm.
Learn about them
Mhm.
and what's important to them and what issues they're having that you can uniquely solve for. And that's what separates you from the pack.
Okay. So you're a master at this, by the way, because you did this to me. Because the first time that we met at coffee, I was trying to eat brunch, breakfast, lunch, because it was like 11-ish and I had
Yeah.
not eaten that day. Marianne's peppering me with questions, which was really great. But what she was doing was learning about me. Right. And he asked me
Yeah.
some really, really great questions. And in fact, when we started today's, before we hit the record button, I'm like, it's my turn to ask all the questions. So, which is great, honestly. But that's a great example of getting to know people, learning about people. Right. So let's go back to the VCP. I named that an acronym for you, by the way. Um, Visibility. What does that mean? And how can we, and I'm going to keep, because I'm a sales guy, so how can we be visible? What are ways to be visible?
Well, what would you define visibility as?
Okay, hold on. This is me asking the
Yeah,
question.
but I'm a coach.
Okay, that makes 2 of us. Okay, but anyways, I will bite. So I think there's a couple of different definitions to visibility. So you've established your credibility in your 15 minutes that you are, I like to say, student of the industry, expert in the industry, expert on healthcare, expert on education, expert on whatever, right?
Whatever,
Hopefully
right.
you've established that when you had your 15 minutes of fame. So now you got to be visible to them.
Mhm.
And I do believe that connecting with people on platforms like LinkedIn are really important, right? But to me, that's only one part of it. That's a connecting. Hey, oh, we're connected on LinkedIn. Great. What kind of content do you create on LinkedIn? How are you visible on LinkedIn? If your visibility on LinkedIn is to just scroll the news feed and like a post here, maybe comment a post here, you're hiding. You're not being visible, right? But you think by liking or commenting that you're being visible, you're really not. And I think there's some statistic like 80% of the people that are on that particular platform are inactive, do not create content. It's probably even more than that. Like maybe it's even like 10%. Joshua B. Lee was on the show last year. He's a LinkedIn trainer and he talked about this. We'll link that show down into the show notes, but about how the small percentage of people that are truly creators or post content on LinkedIn. And I think that's a huge way to be visible, right? Is to post. But here's the tip. Do not post about your product. In our industry, when I scroll the news feed and I see Joe Smith and, Amy, Amy Smith, who I'm just making up names, guys, but it's always product, 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 product. Check out my cool new chair. Look at this great new carpet. It's so much more than that. People are not scrolling to engage with your product, right? In my opinion, create real content. So that's number one. I think be visibility. Another aspect of it, and I'm actually kind of taking over, so I should probably stop that, Coach.
No,
But
you go right ahead.
I think my second aspect of visibility, so visibility, to answer your question, is about being in a place you can be discovered, where people can see you and see what you're doing. So you could be visible at an IIDA event, right? Don't hide in the back
Right.
corner with all of your colleagues. Be out front where the designers are and mingle with the designers, not your colleagues or other sales reps or independent reps or whatever it might be. Go mingle with the designers. So I'm going to, before I keep going down my diatribe, because this is where I'm interviewing you and you're answering the questions. I think it's about being in places where you can be discovered and you can be seen.
Absolutely. So there's a lot that for me to talk about, a lot of things that came to mind while you were saying that. I want to jump back to LinkedIn for a moment. So I think, yes, you're exactly right. You need to be posting, and there's a range. The world is not just black and white, even though my glasses are black and white. So if you're posting about your product, I would argue that that's still visibility. So you're still creating visibility of your brand and who you are connected to that brand. And it may be that designer needs laminate samples and, oh yeah, on LinkedIn, I saw that's the Formica rep. I'm going to call them, right? I wouldn't count on that for your number over your head, but it's visibility, right? Credibility is another thing you can achieve on LinkedIn. And I would argue or suggest that creating that content that is more thought-provoking is not, benefits and features, that is thought-provoking, maybe even around a subject of your target customer's typical problem.
So basically,
shows you
what
as
you're
credible.
saying is start the conversation. Like post something that is, oh wow, right? And get people to engage in that conversation, right? You want people to go ahead.
So interaction, absolutely. You're not going to get a meaningful conversation on LinkedIn. You will get people posting back and forth. Sometimes it can go sideways. It's going to go in a lot of different directions. But again, you're establishing visibility, you're establishing credibility, and you are people that are going to engage in your thought-provoking post. You want the people to engage to be the people who you can solve the problems for. So that's why you want the topic to be about that common problem, because as they're scrolling, they're going to see themselves in that. I have that problem. Like, I want to read this, right? And now you're connected to that. So I would say that's a credibility, play.
So it also, in that scenario, gives you the opportunity. So yet the comment happens, you reply back, somebody else comments, you reply back. That boosts the algorithm, right?
Well, there's
And
that
you
too, right?
your post to more people. But then it creates the next step opportunity, which I think a lot of people miss. Is this is going to sound, but slide up into their DMs, right? Go send that person a DM. Hey,
Sure,
Marianne, I
absolutely,
saw
right.
your post. I saw your
Yes.
comment. I really appreciate the thoughtfulness of your comment. I'd love to set up a time where maybe we could chat more about this. Boom. Now you're to the next step of actually starting to build that relationship with your ideal client, all because of a post. I want to give you an example of a controversial post. So I have a friend. She is a podcaster. She lives out in Colorado. She does a lot of social media work. The name of her business is Rocky Mountain Marketing, where she helps small entrepreneurs with their marketing stuff. And so she posted on Facebook the other day, and this, some people may think it's clickbait. I thought it was exactly what we just described as a way to start a conversation. She says, well, because I screenshot it and sent it to somebody. So I looked up the image. Long form content like podcasts and YouTube are becoming irrelevant in the age of short form content. She's talking about TikTok and Instagram Reels. Agree or disagree? Talk about a comment section full of opinions, right? Now, I didn't ask her why she did this, but I can tell you what I believe why she did this was to create content for her business, to create
Mm,
content where she could share on a podcast or maybe identify a podcast guest to bring on. So that is, if you are a creator, a content creator, this comment, this post, very controversial, right? About the type of content that we create. So that's just an example of that. So let's keep being tactical. I appreciate the tactical part of this, right? So we talked about LinkedIn, but what's another visibility step that somebody could do?
okay, and before we move on, I also just want to tie a ribbon on that and to
Yep.
say what a strategy.
Mhm.
She, if that is what she was after, then I will, I mean, I can imagine and probably could guarantee you that she has a strategy and
Mhm.
she's thought that out. She was not sitting there in her PJs at 8 o'clock with her coffee and go, oh, I think I'll just toss this out
Correct.
there.
Correct.
She has a strategy of what she's trying to achieve. She knows if she's trying to achieve content or
Mhm.
visibility or credibility or all the above. And she has curated her post
Mhm.
to do what it is she wants her to do. So I don't want to leave that subject without acknowledging that having a strategy and a thought out process behind or a thought out outcome that you're after before you make a post is really important. So, and we
And in
could
all
go into
practical,
that all day long.
no, right, but but I appreciate you tying the bow on it. But in all practical purposes, what that post did was potentially lead to generation for her, could be very
Sure.
much for me, right? It
Right.
created visibility because of who she is. It leaned into her credibility, right? But you just said something that I moved my steps around as I was writing my steps out. So our first step is question/clarity, right? Our second
Mm-hmm.
step is VCP, visibility, credibility, profitability. Our
Mm-hmm.
third step is now strategy. What's
Mm-hmm.
your strategy? And our
Mm-hmm.
fourth step is basically get out there, right? Get out there, go generate. Lead generation is our fourth step. Sorry.
Action.
Yes, action. We're creating a
Action.
program, you and I, what we're doing right now.
Right. Right. And I would suggest to you, if we want to take it to another creative endeavor, um, you will never see a Broadway production that doesn't have a script and a lot of rehearsal behind it
Mhm.
before it goes to
Yep,
action. Right. So that's
100%.
what came to me when I said action.
Mhm. Okay, so you're going to give me another tactical visibility thing that somebody could do.
Oh my gosh. Visibility. So, you know, presenting, maybe not in a design firm, but maybe at an event.
Mm.
Maybe
Raise your hand and
you
say, I want to
have,
be a speaker.
maybe be a speaker,
Mm.
maybe sponsor the IIDA national
Mm.
convention. I guess that would be NeoCon,
Yep.
and become a speaker,
Mm.
become a featured
Yep.
speaker,
Mm.
get in front of your target audience,
Mm.
and then, find where they are and then find ways to show up and be visible.
Mhm.
Industry events, that's a visibility, obviously. And to your point, Sid, there are ranges of visibility.
Mhm.
I mean, going there and sitting at the table with 9 others and having a really good, thorough conversation certainly could be value.
Yep.
Might not be as valuable as if you get out and work the room. But
Mhm.
again, think through, what is it you're trying to get out of it?
So there's a couple of things that come to mind for me. Step out of your comfort zone and host a panel discussion. That could be in
Yeah.
person or virtual, or
Yes.
maybe it's both,
Yes.
right? And bring in 3 designers, if you will, experts in their particular area of design, and have a discussion about XYZ topic, right?
Yep.
Another example, like um, Danica Leaks
Oh,
was on my
love
podcast
her.
last
Mm-hmm.
year, and Danica is amazing. And she talked about things she does as a rep. And one of the things Danica does, we'll be sure to link that one down in the show notes too. She does yoga for
Mm-hmm.
designers in her
Mm-hmm.
showroom. Guess what? She didn't talk about furniture. She does
Mm-hmm.
yoga,
Right.
but they see all the furniture, but more importantly, they remember Danica, right?
Right.
That's visibility that they remember her. To your point earlier, I'm scrolling through the feed and I realized I need laminate samples, and I just saw the Formica person post or something. That's another example. So Danica, cheers to you for what you're doing. And a lot of people have been doing things like that. There's just so many ways for you to be visible that honestly, the cost of entry is so small, right? Just
Yeah,
takes
and you're
courage.
touching on something else that's important. There are so many ways.
Mhm.
And I would say an industry standard for a salesperson, you really need to be doing 7 to 8 lead generation activities at one time. 7 or 8. We can probably list 20 plus
Mhm.
if we
Yep.
really put our head to it,
Mhm.
right? So which ones? And so
Mhm.
that's where strategy and return on your time become
Mhm.
important to be clear about,
Mhm.
because I don't know about you, but time is not infinite for me. And if
Nope.
I can get more bang for my buck, I'm going to go that way. But I have to know
Mhm.
what's going to give me the most bang for my
Mhm.
buck. And that's going to be different for different people.
Mhm. And to that point, it's important to do the things that just feel good to you, right? If
Sure.
it feels bad to you and you sit down at your computer and you try to record a video to post on Instagram and that just feels bad to you, then don't do it. Do what
Absolutely
feels
not.
good. However, you're not going to learn how to do something new until you start doing it. I remember the first time, for those of you watching on YouTube, I'm holding up my phone. I remember the first time somebody said, Sid, you got to put a video out on LinkedIn. I'm like, a face video, this old face and all this gray hair video. And they're like, yep. And so I stood like this, the phone up high above me. I was standing in front of my door. I had my hand propped against my door so it would quit shaking, right? And I created a video, and I was in a t-shirt, and which I was just like, I got to do this. I posted on LinkedIn. It actually did really well. You could go like 5 years back and probably find it. Um, 2 days later, I got a package in the mail, and the package in the mail was a clamp mount phone holder so that I could position the phone in a way that I wasn't way up here, like way up high, but I started it, and then I did it for a long time. And I honestly, it became a habit. Like, I called them success sound bites, and they were 30-second or 45, less than a minute, some kind of sound bite about something, sometimes controversial. And I say controversial things here, not to upset anybody, but to create thought. I say something controversial, what I hope, my hope is that whether you agree with me or disagree with me, that you think about it. And you think about what I said, how it might help your business or your people in one way or another, right? But it became a habit. And so I would do it all the time, and I got tons of feedback on them. And then I learned how to batch record them. And again, that was a lot of visibility. It was also establishing credibility and things of that nature. Then I got out of the habit of doing them, and I have not posted a video, and I couldn't tell you how long. It's really sad because I got out of the habit. Those of you that follow me on LinkedIn and Instagram know that I used to be really active with video, and I have stopped that habit. That's
Well,
bad.
Sid, 2 things that come to mind when you talk about that I think are important to remember. especially in sales, is people can see right through you if you're not authentic.
Mhm.
So you have to bring your own
Yep.
self, bring your own passion, bring your own voice
Mhm.
to whatever you're doing. And I would suggest to you there are formulas for a lot of things in sales, but use it like a recipe. I mean, my mother-in-law, amazing. She can put together food, but she can't tell you what she did afterwards. She sort of has a guideline, but she makes it hers. So I'm using as, an
Yep.
analogy, use the formulas because they're proven and they'll bring you
Mhm.
results, but you have to make them your own.
Mhm.
The other thing is, remember that you have to be a learner. We all start as a learner. And
Bingo.
if you can't start as a learner, you're going to get into perfection, you know,
Mhm.
mode where you get stuck
Mhm.
and you'll never do anything because it won't be perfect the first time. So analysis paralysis is another one,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
Allow
Done is
yourself to
better
be
than
a
perfect,
learner.
people. Done is better
Absolutely.
than perfect.
Do
So
it.
let's,
I mean,
yep, do it.
I was
Just
just going
do
to
it.
say, whenever I do a presentation, I always record myself. I always go back. In our organization, SalesStar, we are coaches, but we're also coach each other, and we
Mhm.
are learners, and we're always curious. And we have something that I'll offer to you all. After every engagement, coaching session, presentation, whatever, it's WLC, which back at Steelcase meant Work Life Center, but here it means win, learn, change. And after we have done something, we get together as a team and we go through win, learn, change. What were the wins? What were the things that went swimmingly well?
Mhm.
What were the things that you learned that you
Mhm.
probably want to shift, or you learned something you didn't know through the experience? What are the things you're going to change next time?
Mhm. So I have a very similar philosophy. The listeners that have listened for a while know this. I don't believe in anything as such as failure. To me, failure doesn't exist. You either get the outcome that you wanted or the lesson that you needed. And what's important about this is that you understand the lesson. So, in the same exact scenario, almost exactly the same thing, I basically say you have to ask, it's like a little quadrant, right? You have to ask yourself what went right, because something went right. Didn't everything didn't go bad. If you didn't get the outcome you wanted, it doesn't mean that everything went bad. But you start out with the first quadrant, what went right? Second quadrant, what went wrong? Because if you didn't get the outcome, something didn't go right. So let's what went wrong here? The third thing is probably one of the most important, which is what did I learn from this process? Right? What am I taking away from this process? And the fourth one is I say to people, put your big boy pants or big girl pants on and brush it off and say, what am I going to do differently the next time? Just because you didn't get the result that you wanted means that you should stop. It actually means you learn from it and you keep going. So we have very much a very similar mantra around that.
Absolutely,
Mm.
absolutely. And I, we talked about this at our coffee. And it circles back to what we were talking about in the beginning here. Yes, the pandemic was a huge change that accelerated change probably faster than we were
Mm-hmm.
ready for.
Yep.
The change is constant.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not changing with things, you're going to become stagnant. You probably won't, your success will level out, if
Mm-hmm.
not start to plummet.
Yep.
But I would also argue that in the industry that we're in, which is a creative industry, we need to always be asking, how can we do it differently?
Mm-hmm.
How can we do it better? How
Mm-hmm.
can we do it to have an even better outcome for me and for everybody that's involved?
Yep.
And pushing ourselves to be a learner and always be pushing the envelope to try something new. And I would submit to you that you cannot be afraid of failure
Mm-hmm.
if you want to be creative.
Correct. If you want to succeed, you can't be afraid of it at all. So I am a huge consumer of content. I mentioned that earlier. I'm a huge learner. I'm an active learner, right?
Mhm.
And I find a lot of people that like, oh, I'm not going to listen to podcasts. Oh, I'm not going to read a book. I don't have time to do that. Oh, I'm not going to do this. Oh, I don't have time to go to that class, right? I hear a lot of that. I don't have time to hire a coach, or I can't afford to hire a coach, right? So, what would you say are your top three things that you would say that everybody listening to invest in yourself do these three things? What would they
And
be?
first of all, be clear about what is your vehicle, because
Mm.
I would suggest to you that maybe not everybody's a reader. I
Yep.
love to read. I love the quiet time. I read all kinds of things,
Mm-hmm.
and mostly things that will teach me something. I
Mm-hmm.
love aha moments, but that's
Yep.
my vehicle. I love that. Somebody
Mm-hmm.
else just like does not resonate with them at all. Maybe it's watching videos. Maybe it's
Mm-hmm.
learning on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's getting out and fiddling with something.
Yep.
So I would say first, be clear about what resonates with you and be okay with that. If you don't read 3 books a week, then don't worry about it. But what do you do? And to your point, Sid, we can sit around and we can look for all the ways that we can't do something. We can look for all the
Mm-hmm.
roadblocks,
Yep.
and their roadblocks are there. Nobody's scot-free here. Nobody has
Yep.
like a clear path to do anything, right? So there's
Mm-hmm.
always going to be challenges. They're there for a reason, by the
Mm-hmm.
way.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I can't do this. I don't have the money for this,
Mm-hmm.
but I can do this.
Yep. An example of that might be, I can't afford one-on-one coaching, but I can afford group coaching, as an example, right?
Exactly.
A way. So if you had to give people 2 or 3 like tactical things, like, hey, invest in yourself, do this, what would you say? Your first thing was figure out what's your vehicle, like what's the vehicle that you want, how you want to consume comments. So what would be the other 2 things you would tell them?
I'm probably going to be very generic and less tactical around this, but I would say number 1 is know yourself.
Yep.
You know thyself. Like, who are you? What makes you tick? What makes you just get really happy?
Mm-hmm.
What feeds you energy, right?
Yep.
You got to know that. The second thing would be, what is your why?
Mm-hmm.
And that changes through life. We all go through different seasons in our life,
mm-hmm.
different perspectives in our life. And so what is the why behind what it is that you're going to do?
Mm-hmm.
Because if it's not a strong why, you won't stick to it.
For those of you who are not familiar with that, I would highly encourage you to read Simon Sinek's book or listen to Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why. It describes the why in it's his first book. It's really the book that catapulted him to the stardom that he has today. So, but great points. So I will be tactical, just because that's who I am. So before NeoCon, I was feeling a little stress, a lot, little anxiety. I felt like I didn't have much me time. So coming back from NeoCon, I said, I'm going to take back my mornings because I'm an early bird. I mean, I'm up at 5 to 5:30 every day, right? But my day would start at 6:30. I'm like sitting in my office, 6, sometimes responding to emails. And then I would start taking calls at 7, sometimes even before, because half of our team is in Europe, right? And a lot of our suppliers are in Europe, right? So I'd start taking calls early. And then all of a sudden, I was dressed by 6 o'clock, right? And all of a sudden the day was gone. And like, where did my time go? So I set on this initiative, this intention, if you will, of taking back my mornings. So I blocked off any availability in my calendar from 7 to 9 o'clock, with one exception on Thursdays. And so I get up at 5:15 ish, sometimes before, sometimes after. And I between 6 o'clock and 6:05, I head out the door and put the walk button on my watch, and I walk for 3 miles, which is right at an hour. And basically, I'm just making loops in my neighborhood. Kind of boring. It's not great scenery, but still, I'm doing it, right? I'm doing it. That's the one thing. And now it's become a habit.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's my content consumption time. So before I walk out the door, I open up my podcast app. I have several things that I follow. Like, to your point, I know right now what I want to type of content I want to consume. I'm looking right now to consume leadership content. And there's lots of different reasons, but so I've been looking for podcasts about leadership, and looking for content about customer experience is another topic that's really interesting to me. So, and I've now alternated. So every other day is podcast day, and then the opposite days are book day. So I have audiobooks that I'm listening to that are somewhat on the same topics as well. And then, I come back in, have a recovery, just a smaller recovery, drink a protein shake, right? I sit outside with the dogs and just rest and relax. And Then I go get dressed and start my day. And it's made a world of difference in the quality of my life because I took back my time. And I think that's what we're talking about is do what works for you when it works for me. But for me, it was kind of a bigger thing. So the tactical things were I listened to podcasts and I listened to books while I'm exercising, which is helping to take care of my body. Right. And
Mhm.
I also find the mornings to be such a perfect time to think. Like just like when I'm sitting outside with the dogs, I'm just thinking like, like my
Yeah.
mind's thinking, oh, what, I heard them say this on this podcast. Wonder if we implemented that. What would it be like? Or how would
Yeah.
this help us get better or create a better customer experience or drive more revenue? I'm thinking about all those things. And then if I get one of those ahas, I just jot it down in my notes app on my phone.
Yeah. Yeah. That is a beautiful thing, Sid. And it's so, introspective of you to recognize that you needed that time,
Mhm.
recognize something was maybe
Mhm.
off, and figure out a way to bring that back in your life. I
Yep.
think there's a little bit of a, an idea of theory,
Mhm.
not theory, sorry, another idea of boundary
Mhm.
there, like
Yes.
creating boundary, right? That's something that you did.
Mhm.
You decided where that boundary was going to be, nothing before 9 o'clock, right?
Mhm. Yep.
So
Important.
I did think of one that's
Tell me.
tactical that's
Yes.
been like super impactful for me. And this is more of a, like, I don't know, in the weeds kind of a thing, but
That's okay.
I'm a list maker.
Mm.
If I have an idea, I put it in a list, and then I figure out when I'm going to get it done. And a lot of time my lists are really, really long,
Mhm.
and I like to try to do too much,
Mhm.
and I wear myself out and other people too. And I had a leader once suggest to me that maybe I could take some things off my list. And I thought she probably had three eyes. I couldn't understand what in the world she was talking about. I said, I can't do that. Like, you're asking me to choose between children. Like, I don't know
Yeah.
which one I would take off the list. So she shared with me something that I've shared with others, and I'll share it with you today. And that is effort versus impact. And she actually drew it up on the marker board, two
Mhm.
axes:
Yep.
effort, low effort, high effort. And then the other axis was low impact, high impact. And I got so nerded out by that. I just took my whole planner, like all the activities and lists and things,
Mhm.
and I plotted everything on that
Yep.
graph. And it was eye opening for me because it took the emotion out of it, and it made it very clear what
Mhm.
was worth my time, which we've already suggested is not
Yeah.
infinite,
Yep.
right? So
I love
I'll
that.
guess.
So guys, draw that L graph, right? Put effort on the Y or the X, wherever you want to put it, and then put
Yeah, either
impact on
one.
the other one, right? And then ask yourself that activity, is this activity high effort, low impact, or is it low effort, high impact? And then ideally in the L, where you want to be is in the upper right quadrant, right? Where you've got
Yeah.
high impact and high effort, right? And that's
Well,
ideally where you want to be.
I would actually suggest you want to be like close to the high impact line, but
Yeah. Lower
you want to
impact,
be on the
lower effort.
low side of the low
Low effort.
effort
Yeah.
side. So
Yeah, that's right. That's
we
what I
can
meant to
visualize
say.
that in a lot of different
Yeah.
ways.
So she and I are both using our hands, guys, to describe this. Sorry, you're listening, not watching that silliness. But so here's what I'm going to say that I learned today. And I really appreciate Marianne you coming on and answering this question because I want to know more. And I know my listeners want to know more because it's like this anomaly out here of how do we call on, how do we work with the A&D community? Because they are enormous influencers and decision makers inside of the world of furniture, right? And a lot of things. So I think my key takeaways are um, be different, right? Stand out, be different, embrace your 15 minutes of fame, and then start to be visible, be credible while being profitable with it, right? Just got to be out there and it's going to lead to, I mean, we talked about so many different tactical things you could do. It's going to lead to the next step of building that relationship. It's going to lead to that DM or that email where you can invite that designer or designers to coffee to get to know them more, maybe invite them out for drinks because of whatever, right? So I think we're hopefully for all of you listening, there were a lot of ideas for the you're thinking now about what you could do differently to reach this important segment in our industry. So Marianne, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your insights and your expertise in this area. Any final last words you want to leave our listeners with today?
Be yourself, be authentic.
Love that.
I would say that you got to bring your authenticity to everything 100%. That you do.
Because being somebody else is hard. It's hard, really hard. Be you.
Not just hard, but everybody sees right through it.
Absolutely. So if our community would like to get in touch with you, what is the best way for them to do that?
So email is probably the best way to do that. Awesome. And we can drop that in your show notes rather than me try.
We got a lot of stuff going in the show notes today, a lot of episodes and links to books and other things, including Marianne's email. We'll also put her LinkedIn profile down there. So if you do reach out to her, please let her know that you heard her here on the Trend Report. And that's why you're reaching out. You got some value from her conversation. Marianne, thank you again for being here. For all of you listening to us today, thanks for being part of this community, and go out there and make today great. And we'll see you again in a couple of weeks. Take care, everyone.